coast to coast.
Check 1, 2. Testing.
Now hear me.
You're listening to This Week in Costa Rica
Once the volume control is set, do not readjust.
on the Overseas Radio Network.
That's why I want you to go on the radio.
This Week in Costa Rica, bringing you the latest information from expats, experts, and people just like you who chose to escape, retire, and live in Costa Rica.
Listen and decide in your own mind what sounds best.
Got a question? A comment?
They have to be dealt with on an altogether different level.
Or just want to talk to an expert on living in Costa Rica?
Brother, what a way to make a living.
Give us a call now.
Hello?
Lines are open and your answers are just one phone call away.
Now, if you have some suggestions to offer, we're willing to listen to you.
Ready?
This Week in Costa Rica with your host,
Who you?
Corey Coates.
And now, folks,
It's showtime.
Welcome to This Week in Costa Rica. My name is Corey Coates, and I'm coming to you live from the Overseas Radio Broadcast Facility here at Jaco Beach, Costa Rica. Another beautiful, sunny, lovely day here on the West Coast, just after 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, we come to you each and every week on the Overseas Radio Network from 2 to 4. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you have downloaded this episode, thank you. And if you are new to This Week in Costa Rica, welcome. If this is your first time here, I want to let you know there's a place where you can get all of the information that we're going to cover in these next 2 hours, and there's a lot today. In one centralized location, you can go to thisweekincostarica.com, and there you're going to find show notes, links to all of the different folks that we talk to, the businesses that we mention, as well a bunch of blogs and other interesting stuff about Costa Rica coming from yours truly. You can always go to overseasradio.com if you're not there now to get a quick summary of these shows. And if you're listening live at the moment and you're wondering, who the heck is this guy? Of course, there's a bio there. And if you like this show and you want to get some more episodes that were recorded prior to now, you can go to the archive section and download them free of charge anytime you like. Today, we have a ton of material that I want to cover. We do have a few more emails that I want to get into. Mr. Lyle Head, the property manager at Daystar Properties, is going to be coming in to studio to answer some emails, speak with me a little bit more. And if you like, we can, of course, take some of your phone calls, because that is the point of having a live radio program. You can call us whenever you want, toll free. In Canada or the U.S., 888-741-7472. If you're listening right now, you can see that right there on the live player, so I'm not going to have to mention it too many times. Love when you guys join the conversation. Chime in with whatever it is that you want to know. Questions, comments, good, bad, and ugly, go ahead and bring them on. Speaking of the good, the bad, the ugly, of course, segment 2 today, we will be speaking with my friend Dan Stevens. Dan is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Costa Rican Times, one of my favorite online news sources, becoming less of an online news source and more of an editorial, telling more of his story as an expat here in Costa Rica, and that's why I bring him on each and every week. Formerly from Texas, moved here as an expat. He has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. He has lived it. He's blogging about it, and he's giving you a lot of stuff that's going on now in Costa Rica with his slant. Dangerous? Maybe. But I like a little bit of danger in my life. Another guy who is going to be on today, a very special guest. His name is James Kaiser. James came to Costa Rica 5 years ago as a tourist, having written a bunch of best-selling guidebooks to Acadia National Park, Yosemite, and more. In Costa Rica, made the bold decision to stay here and write another guidebook on Costa Rica. You say to yourself, God, really, do we need another guidebook on Costa Rica? Got a stack of them here in the studio I'm looking at right now. Well, James said yes. James says, I can do it better. He was a photographer for Yahoo Sports for the Olympics in Italy. Obviously, he knows his way around a camera. And as a best-selling guidebook author, knows how to write a word or two about an area in the world that you might think about expatriating to or traveling to. Again, though, James approaches this with the good, the bad, and the ugly, the warts and all approach to the guidebook. 500 pages nearly. Fantastic publication. Really put something together that I think covers Costa Rica in a way that the competitors, if I use that word, never could. You know, a lot of people come to a certain area in Costa Rica and they're working for some of these major publications, and they will go to a national park and spend a half a day there. And within that half a day, they're going to put together a little blurb and then move along. Have their free lunch at some place that's going to give them the free lunch to get mentioned in the book. And then boom, you understand that area. Well, you know what? James says, heck no. If you're going to go to Costa Rica, you need to sit and stew in it. You got to find all the great spots by living there. Talk to the locals and get around and really be a part of the culture and the experience. As an eco-tourist himself, he found endless opportunities to explore this beautiful jewel of a country in a way that many of the guidebook authors never have. So I'm happy to have him on the program coming up today as well. We mentioned that James is a photographer. Well, photography is an interesting field here in Costa Rica, largely because the backdrop of Costa Rica itself is simply spectacular, as anyone would know. This green, beautiful, lush, nature-packed country, boasting in many areas what is referred to as some of the most biodiverse regions in the world, gives those shutterbugs a good chance to get out and snap some shots like they might never have before. With that in mind, today we're going to be speaking to Kimberly Beck. Kimberly, a friend of mine, though we've never met, have become fast friends online, I think. Her and her husband have opened up a photography course and retreat on the east side of Costa Rica, that place outside of Limon. It's called San Miguel, actually. It's a very small community. It's between Limon and a place called Siquires, which is the whitewater rafting capital pretty much of Costa Rica. They put together 23 acres. It's a series of photography workshops, homesteading, and great jungle accommodations for those that really want to get off the grid. I'm planning to spend a little bit of time out there myself this year. As you can well imagine, I'm surrounded by computers and screens and phones, devices and gadgets that light up and blink and hum and whir all day long, as I'm sure you do in your cubicle right now. Well, sometimes we need to get away from that, and we need to do something with that $800 camera we just bought on Amazon, other than leave it on auto, point and click and hope for the best. Well, if you've got a nice camera and you want to learn about photography, you got a little bit of the adventure bug in you, and you want to learn more about sustainable living and do it in an environment that's going to bring utter peace and tranquility, well, Kimberly's going to talk about 10 Degrees Above. It's the name of her place, the name of her retreat. 10degreesabove.com is the website. Of course, the best thing you guys can do as a listener right now, just go to my site. That's thisweekincostarica.com. You're going to find all the links to all the things we talk about today and a whole bunch more, including 10 Degrees Above, the Costa Rican Times, JamesKaiser.com, links over to what Lyle's doing, a whole bunch more. Jam-packed day today. Stick around, 888-741-7472 if you want to call in. My name's Corey. You're listening to This Week in Costa Rica only on the Overseas Radio Network.
So you want to jump out your trick bag and ease on into hip bag, but you ain't just exactly sure what's hip.
South of the border. Imagine strolling along over 3 miles of secluded beach, playing a round of golf along the ocean, surfing a world-class break all to yourself, enjoying a fine meal on your balcony, and toasting to another spectacular sunset. All this and more can be yours only an hour from Managua. Complete home and lot packages start under $100,000, and a nice home on the golf course is yours for the mid-twos. Come visit for a weekend and enjoy our oceanside golf course. Ride horseback on the beach, meet your future neighbors, and make some new friends. Grand Pacifica may be a place you'd like to call home. For more information, email Mike at mikesgringolife.com. That's Mike at mikesgringolife.com.
I don't recycle. I mean, we can just find another planet for your kids to live on, you know?
Log on to yougottabekidding.org and learn about all the ways you can recycle.
Hey, recycling's just not my thing.
Don't be that guy. Log on to yougottabekidding.org.
You're tuned in to overseasradio.com, the station to help you reach your dream destination.
This Week in Costa Rica is hosted by Canadian entrepreneur Corey Coates. Corey has been living and working as a professional in Costa Rica for over 5 years.
Well, I've been lost in my own place, and I'm getting with it.
He's built a vast network of professional connections to help you with everything from immigration to relocation. Call in or send Corey an email to talk about the steps you need to take in making your dream of living in paradise a reality.
Welcome back to This Week in Costa Rica. Spending a beautiful afternoon in sunny Jaco Beach, broadcasting live from the Overseas Radio Broadcast Facility here, oceanfront. Still my favorite word, never getting over that. Got a lot of emails and stuff to get to today. Don't forget the live number is 888-741-7472. Now, it is my distinct pleasure here on segment 2. We normally have Dan Stevens from the Costa Rican Times via Skype, but today we're lucky because we have Dan actually live here in studio. Dan, how are you?
I am great. I'm great, Corey. I guess that beach is getting to me.
Rough night.
Yeah, it's something like that. But anyway, I love it out here. It's you've got a beautiful view of the beach from the studio. So
thank you very much and appreciate your time here. Obviously, you're here doing a little bit of business for the Costa Rican Times. Why don't we jump right into that right now? Now, look, there is an article that you guys put up that definitely caught my attention. It's entitled "How to Not Pay Your Costa Rica Driving Fine." Now, wait a minute. What are we talking about here?
It's more not really not paying it, but let's say you don't have some cash in your pocket right now, and it's in your fines between $100 and $500, depending on what you did, or they took away your car for driving intoxicated, etc. I don't encourage doing any of these things, but what you're able to do is, because they're so backed up in the system right now, you can appeal your case. You appeal your case through your lawyer down here in Costa Rica, and they're backlogged about 160,000 cases right now, and they've got 40 lawyers to try to take care of this. Wow. What they expect is they should get to your case in about 4 to 6 months. So during that time, you don't accrue any interest on your fine, and you don't have to pay it. If you got your car taken away for not having Reteve paid or Marchamo paid, or you got caught drunk driving, they're required to give you your car back.
This is incredible. Okay, now, first of all, you said initially that if you don't happen to have any money in your pocket, are you suggesting that the Costa Rica Transito Police might be susceptible to bribing?
That's no comment on that. No, it's actually yes. They from a few articles I've read and from stories I've heard around Costa Rica. If it's a $200 fine, usually you can get out of it for about 20,000 colones or $40 to the police officer that pulls you over.
Wow, it's interesting because I think that's always the thing. If you only pay a transito or a traffic cop, $600 a month. I mean, these guys are looking for every opportunity to make a couple extra bucks on the road.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that statement. And I mean, if you are making $600 a month, and you're trying to put your life out on the line, or I mean, if you look at the police force and those civil servants in the States and in Canada, they're paid quite well. They've got a pension fund, and down here they don't really get either of those.
It's pretty tough because I don't want to admit yesterday that I went about 120 through an 80 zone. There was a speed trap, and I was talking to my cell phone. The guy had the radar gun pointed right at my face. He didn't pull me over.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I was on the way to Jaco the other day or yesterday as well, and I was riding with a guy, and we were behind a car that seemed like it didn't have any headlights. There seemed to be 4 people in the back seat, including an infant, and it was swerving all over the road. So,
oh my God!
But I mean, hey, it happens down here. You can't really call a cop and say, "Hey, we see this on the road," because they're not going to show up for 30 minutes to an hour anyway.
Practical advice for any expat or anybody who's coming down here to visit is, number one, try and drive during the day whenever possible. Number 2 is keep a safe distance from pretty much every vehicle on the road. Obviously, you want to keep your 2 chevrons, so to speak, no matter where you are. But I think here's another place as well. Even though you need to drive probably a little more aggressively than you might in North America, our true consideration is, look, take it easy, get away from some of these cars, because if he runs into you and something happens, don't expect a cop to show up on the scene in the next 2 minutes and something to go down. I mean, really what's going to happen is he's going to run into you and he's going to take off and you're in trouble. You know?
I agree with what you're saying. And the defensive driving is something that's not in the mindset of most drivers down here.
No, that's exactly it. So, I mean, take it easy, drive during the day as well, because driving at night, not only for security reasons, because those do exist, but more in that the highways aren't necessarily the best. They're not well marked or indicated, and especially at night, it tends to be when the rain falls, the roads get slick, it's dark, and you don't know where you're going. And these are a lot of winding, curvy, narrow roads through mountains. Some of them just drop off to sheer 400-foot cliffs, you know? So if you don't know where you're going and you don't know what you're navigating, you better have the sunlight behind you.
Well, you told me a story one time about you driving back to San Jose on a rainy October night on the highway, and it's hard to see anything. So
yeah, I almost met the maker that night a couple of times, and I swear when I got to my destination, I got out of the SUV and kissed the ground. And it's because, thank you, I made it here. There were a lot of times when I certainly didn't think that I was going to. So I guess head over to the Costa Rican Times. That's Costa Rican with an N times.com. Check out that article and so many more. Now, while I'm here on this, I see that you guys are running a contest right now.
Yeah, what we're doing is to get people more involved into what we're reading, et cetera, as well as to try to get readers, our normal readers, to have gifts, giveaways, et cetera. We're giving away items each month. For example, this month we have a 1-month yoga a membership to Flying Fitness in Escazú, as well as in downtown San Jose at Bamboo Body Works. We have a free 1-hour massage. And all they have to do is like us on Facebook, and that's it. We're not asking them to give us their email or name or anything. We just want them to like us on Facebook, and we choose one of our Facebook people or that are Facebook fans, and they get that each month.
Great giveaway. I've already liked you, so I don't know if I'm eligible. And I guess probably a lot of people would complain if I won a free massage from the Costa Rican Times. So I'm just going to let that be. But you guys as listeners right now can go over to CostaRicanTimes.com. Of course, you can find the links to Dan's great site on thisweekincostarica.com or always on overseasradio.com if you go to my radio show page. And go over there and like this guy, because I'm telling you, this is one of my favorite publications for a reason that, Dan, you and I were talking about a little bit today. And is that you and I think, are starting to move away from the news and more into really the experiences that expats have or might have here in Costa Rica. You're providing something, I think, a little bit more editorial with a bit more of a slant and giving the readers a perspective that they're not finding in a lot of other sources online.
Most of the current news in Costa Rica, a lot of people don't really care about. I mean, when it talks about the government stuff down here, what they want to know is they want to know about things that affect them personally or experiences down here that they can relate to. And most of the local news, be it here in Costa Rica or in the States, doesn't really tie directly to people, and we want to get more involved with that.
I think it's a great idea. And I mean, that's the direction we're taking this show as well, with a lot more interviews with expat entrepreneurs and talking more about what it's really like to be an expat here and what are some of the things that are going on day to day that truly do affect us. And otherwise, go to lanacion.com and right-click and translate it is what I say if you really want to know exactly what's going on point by point in the government of Costa Rica.
Yep, that's what you're able to do. So we just want to have people that go. For example, this week we'll be talking a little bit about the Carlos Duran Sanatorium. There's a bat zoo that's around in Monteverde, and things that are kind of off the beaten path that we want people to know about down here.
All great stuff. Again, thank you for your time, Mr. Dan Stevens, coming in today live in the studio here in Hako Beach. Much appreciated. Coming up next, we're going to run into a break here, so I got to pay a couple bills. But I do want to have a conversation with a guy by the name of James Kaiser. James is a world-renowned tour book writer and author, bestseller. Just wrote a great guidebook to Costa Rica. So stick around, guys. We've got James Kaiser coming up next. And, of course, your emails, your phone calls on This Week in Costa Rica, only on the Overseas Radio Network.
So you want to jump out your trick bag and ease on into hip bag, but you ain't just exactly sure what's hip.
Sit back and relax. You are tuned into the Overseas Radio Network.
This is 90 Seconds with Joel Nagel on the Overseas Radio Network.
I have over $10 million in assets I'd like to protect. Wouldn't expatriation be the best solution to protect my assets?
Well, expatriation is the ultimate asset protection, estate planning, and tax minimization vehicle. It only makes sense for the very fewest folks willing to actually renounce their citizenship. Under United States legislation, it's become more difficult, but not impossible for folks to expatriate. There are still a lot of compliance rules that you have to work through. You have to file final tax returns and pay some tax associated with expatriation. But once you get to the other side of expatriation, you're no longer a U.S. person. You're no longer subject to worldwide income taxation. And so for some select people, expatriation is a choice to completely avoid future taxation.
For more information on the 15 global strategies to protect your wealth, visit nagellaw.com. That's NAGELLAW.com.
This is Kathleen Petticord and Leif Simon with the Live and Invest Overseas Minute on the Overseas Radio Network. If your plan is to move to another country full-time, then one of the most important things to research is the available options for obtaining a foreign residency visa there. Not all countries make it easy to establish permanent legal foreign residency. Meantime, others roll out the welcome mat for foreign retirees, offering many good options for how to become a full-time resident and even in some cases take advantage of special tax and other savings depending on your residency status.
You can generally avoid the issue of establishing foreign residency altogether by spending fewer than 3 months in any one country annually. In some countries, you can remain in the country as a tourist for only 2 months, while other places allow you as much as 6 months.
The most foreign retiree-friendly countries right now include Panama, Belize, Uruguay, Ecuador, Nicaragua, and in Malaysia, which is the only country in Asia that offers a straightforward residency option for foreign retirees. For more information on making the leap overseas, visit us online at liveandinvestoverseas.com.
Overseasradio.com, broadcasting from Panama to Paris and beyond.
Good. What? What is it? This Week in Costa Rica. Fun, informative, and your questions answered. Talk live with one of our on-air experts and start living your dream now.
Welcome back to This Week in Costa Rica, broadcasting from the Overseas Radio Facility here in Hako Beach, Costa Rica, oceanfront, looking out over the big, beautiful sea. I want to thank Dan Stevens, spending a little time with me in that previous segment in the Central Valley, talking about what's going on in San Jose these days. Always a pleasure to have Dan with us. But without further ado, I want to get to my next guest. I'm really excited to be talking to a man by the name of James Kaiser right now. James is actually getting a lot of attention in the Costa Rican blogosphere and newspapers these days, as he's compiled Costa Rica, the Complete Guide. Now, before you stop me and say, oh my God, you got to be kidding, there's another guidebook, because I have a stack of them here in the studio about the size of a hobbit. You needn't worry. I think James Kaiser has approached this a little bit differently. So first of all, let me welcome James to This Week in Costa Rica. How are you, James?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Corey?
I'm great. Now, we're talking to you. You're up in the United States now, correct?
Well, I'm actually in Costa Rica right now.
You're kidding. I thought you went back to the States recently.
No. I'm in San Jose. I'm in the Central Valley right now.
Oh, my God. See, I'm going to San Jose tomorrow. Looks like we're going to have to hook up for some lunch.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds great. Well, let me tell you, if I could get your background a little bit, I want to get this right now. This is not the first guidebook that you've written. It looks like back in 2000, you wrote a great guidebook about the Acadian National Park, Acadia, the National Park. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And, it all kind of, people always ask me, how did you get this job writing guidebooks? It seems like the greatest job in the world, and it is. And it really, I fell into it. There was no sort of grand strategy. What happened to me was back in 1999, after I graduated from college, I went back to Maine, where I was born and raised. And I just had this idea that, I thought a lot of the guidebooks to Acadia National Park, which is in Maine, and it's a park that I knew really well, weren't that good. They were written by people that didn't really know the park that well. It seemed like, a big guidebook company had just sent them there for a couple weeks. And I knew the park really well, and I just thought, there was so much to this place that people weren't seeing, that the guidebooks weren't talking about, they weren't doing. And so I just decided to write my own. And I thought I was going to take a year off, and I was going to write a guidebook, and it'd be a lot of fun, and then I'd go back to school. And when the guide came out, it flew off the shelves. People loved it. It became the best-selling guide to Acadia. And ever since then, I've been writing guidebooks.
Yeah, because I've noticed now you also have best-selling guides to the Grand Canyon, Joshua Tree, and Yosemite National Parks. You've been busy on this.
Oh, yeah. So, before I came down to Costa Rica, I was working on guides specifically to national parks. So after I had finished the Acadia guide, I moved out west. I moved out to California and started working on national park guides out there. And it was the same thing. I mean, I just sort of approached the national parks with a different kind of angle, more thorough angle, lots of photography. We'll get into that in a second, I'm sure. But basically, I worked really hard to make incredible guides, and all those guides turned into bestsellers. And this past year, actually, every single one of my national park guides was the #1 bestseller for each of their respective national parks.
Sounds like this is exactly what you were born to do.
I don't know, but I guess so. I never felt like I was born to be a travel writer. Like I said, I kind of stumbled into it. But so far, so good, and it's going great.
So what's the story that led you to Costa Rica in the first place? I mean, having written a bunch of successful guidebooks, there's a number of places in the world you could have chosen. Why here?
Yeah, so it was really just a complete coincidence. I was in the middle of working on my Yosemite guide, which originally came out in 2007. And, I took a break to be a photographer at the Winter Olympics in Torino, Italy. I was taking photos for Yahoo Sports. And, it was great, but for a month and a half, I was up in, this remote alpine ski town. It's called Sestriere. And it was just brutally cold. I mean, freezing, walking home through snowstorms, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of it, a friend of mine invited me to come down to Costa Rica. And this was a friend from college, and his father had moved down to Costa Rica in the mid-'90s. Had purchased a hotel and was running the hotel. So I accepted the invitation. I went down, and it was one of the best vacations I'd ever had. It was, of course, coming from a cold, wintry place to a tropical, sunny place, made a big impression.
Sure.
But it was just everything, the natural beauty, the biodiversity, the people. It's just a beautiful country, and I fell in love with it.
Well, we see this all the time. I mean, anybody who comes down to Costa Rica, I think the expression is you never visit Costa Rica once, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's true. I really don't know very many people that have just visited it once. Repeat visitation seems to be just a constant down here. So anyway, when I finished up the Yosemite book, I couldn't get Costa Rica out of my head, and I looked into it, and at that point, my guides were selling great. I could live anywhere that I wanted to in the world, and I decided, hey, I'm going to go down to Costa Rica. I'm going to give it a shot.
It's incredible. Now, prior to coming to Costa Rica, did you speak any Spanish or even having a passing familiarity with the Costa Rican culture?
Oh, no, I spoke zero Spanish. I grew up in Maine, and in Maine, Maine might be the only state in the U.S. where the second most spoken language isn't Spanish, but French. So I wound up, I studied French when I was, in middle school and high school, and then when I was in college. I had no Spanish experience, and I didn't have much experience with Latin American culture at all. So those were two huge obstacles. When I first came down to Costa Rica, those were the two biggest things that I had to contend with.
So that you come down here and you fall in love with the country, and what's the tipping point where you say to yourself, okay, I think I'm going to write another travel guide here, but I'm going to do it based on Costa Rica?
Yeah, it was, obviously I came down, I loved it. I couldn't stop thinking about Costa Rica. But what really happened was when I thought, hey, what if I could? What if I, could switch from doing national parks to doing an entire country like Costa Rica? Let me go and see what guidebooks are out there. So I checked out the guidebooks that were out there, and it was the same feeling that I had, 10 years earlier when I had, started on my first guidebook to Acadia. I just looked around at the guidebooks and I thought, these are fine, these are acceptable, but I just think they could be so much more.
It's interesting, too, because just sitting here now, I do a lot of part-time writing myself, and I can only imagine how daunting the task is, how much research has to go into a book like this. Like, for me, I would just fall over and die imagining the amount of overwhelming work that it would entail.
Yeah, well, I think my greatest asset, and this was the same thing when I started on the Acadia book, God, it's almost 13 years ago, was I didn't know how much work it was going to be. So had I known, I probably never would have started. I probably never would have done it. But I was completely ignorant to how much of a challenge it was actually going to be. And so by the time I realized that this is just an incredible amount of work, an overwhelming amount of work, it was too late. I was already halfway through, so there was no going back. So, and for the National Park guidebooks, I mean, those, my biggest ones are about 300 pages. This Costa Rica book is just about 500 pages. So it was a monster.
Well, that's incredible. And it looks like your book's going to include a lot of full color pictures and all kinds of history of the country. I mean, just the research alone is such a daunting task.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me too, it's not just, one of my problems with a lot of the travel guides that, I had seen, both for national parks in the U.S. and for Costa Rica was, when I travel somewhere, I like to learn about that place. For me, like that's part of why I love to travel is discovering new things, learning about new things, seeing new cultures. It's not just going, to a restaurant and, the pool at the hotel. Like I want to learn. And it seems like a lot of the guides out there, they sort of follow the most basic path that you can follow, which is, we're going to include, something about history because we have to, and we're going to include something about, the natural history and something about wildlife. But they're really just, it's an afterthought and it's shoved in the back of the book. I flip that equation around entirely. I think that stuff is some of the most important stuff when you're traveling somewhere. So I actually put it in the front of the book, and I devote a significant portion of the book to those things, to the history, to the culture, to the wildlife, to the natural history, the geology, all these things I really focus on. And is it a lot of work, a lot of research? Yeah, it's an enormous amount. But I love it. I find it incredibly fascinating, and ultimately it makes a much better guide.
Well, we're going to get into this quite a bit today because there's a number of differentiators I found in some of your work. And that is the biggest one is that, prior to moving to Costa Rica, of course, I bought a lot of the standard off-the-shelf Costa Rica guidebooks. But what it didn't really prepare me for was what truly awaited me in this country.
Yeah, and that's, I would say the exact same thing. That was part of the reason why I was completely unprepared. And I think part of the problem stems from, too, that, a lot of, again, the path of least resistance, the way that nobody's going to get in any trouble is say, everybody here is wonderful, everybody's friendly, it's great, it's great, it's great. And, is it true? Yeah, it's true. Like, people here, like people anywhere, are wonderful and lovely and friendly. You also have people that are, not so friendly. It's like anywhere else. But there are these cultural differences. There are these things that are different. And, it can be a little bit uncomfortable to talk about them. But I didn't want to just, say, oh, everything's wonderful and leave it at that. I wanted to dive into the complexity. I wanted to dive into, some of the things that people are going to encounter. So, it's an honest portrayal. It's really showing people, hey, there are these differences. You should be aware of them. And that way, I think it's going to make it easier for travelers and for expats and for everybody else that wants to learn a little bit more about this country.
All right, let's dive into that after this break. We're going to take a commercial, but we're going to be right back with James Kaiser on This Week in Costa Rica.
You ain't just exactly sure what's hip.
OverseasRadio.com, broadcasting from Panama to Paris and beyond.
Ready to check out Lake Chapala? Then you need to check in with Sid Grosvenor, the Lake Chapala information guy and exclusive buyers-only realtor. Why, Sid? Because Sid's been helping people just like you decide if Lake Chapala is right for them for over 11 years. Sid tells it like it is without the sugarcoating. As an exclusive buyers-only realtor, he only represents the best interest of his clients, and there's never a charge to you for his services. That's right, your representation is paid for as part of the seller's closing cost mandated by their agency listing contract. So, send Sid an email today to get the ball rolling to sid@chapalaclub.com. That's SID@CHAPALA.com. Please put Lake Chapala as the subject line because Sid gets hundreds of emails and he wants yours to stand out so he can answer it right away. You'll be glad you did.
Establish your business in one of the most extraordinary cities in the world. Connect to a market of over 1.8 billion people from Dubai. Over 1,400 companies from around the world have made Dubai Airport Free Zone their Middle East and Africa headquarters. Dubai Airport Free Zone was rated one of the top free zones in the world. Let us help you set up your operations at Dubai Airport Free Zone and expand your market and sales in Asia and Africa. Call us at 214-537-9665 or send us an email at info@dafz-usa.com. That's info@dafz-usa.com.
OverseasRadio.com, broadcasting from Panama to Paris and beyond.
You know what I just heard?
What? Costa Rica has the reputation of being the happiest country on earth.
But it gets better.
This Week in Costa Rica brings you the best information.
The best.
From the people who understand why so many choose to call this beautiful place home. Bringing you the latest information from expats, experts, and people just like you who chose to escape, retire, and live in Costa Rica. This Week in Costa Rica. Pura Vida.
Welcome back to This Week in Costa Rica. Spending the afternoon here with my guests. Turns out Mr. James Kaiser is in San Jose right now, so it's great. I was going to make fun of him. I think he was back up in Maine and freezing his butt off, but turns out he's enjoying the warm weather down here with us. If you guys want to join us on the program, of course you certainly can. Don't forget that toll-free number anywhere in Canada and the U.S. 888-741-7472 if you want to chime in on this conversation. Going back to James Kaiser, of course, though, what I appreciated and what we were talking about before the break there, James, is just how this book is really approaching travel writing and providing a guide that is giving a little bit more of a personalized insight instead of glazing over the country. And I think what you're doing here is you're providing a service to a lot of people that are coming to Costa Rica.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way because that for me that was one of the most important things about writing this book was providing honest, accurate information and not just sugarcoating it and not just saying everything's wonderful, everything's 150% fantastic, but being honest about it. I mean, it is a wonderful country, a wonderful place, but there are these things that with tourist brochures and websites and all that stuff can get glossed over. And I really wanted to give a more honest account.
I think that's a great thing to do. And, we have some regulars on this show who don't shy away from those issues. And I think that's critical because, even as the drop there said, Costa Rica, the happiest place on earth. And it's like, well, that's one way you can look at it. And it certainly is. But, there's a lot of descriptors used for Costa Rica. And you could substitute in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's still going to mean the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, like I said, it's sort of the path of least resistance, for somebody who's going to be producing, any kind of information. But, that's what makes life interesting. That's what makes travel interesting is that there are differences. There are things that are unique and unusual and that you're not going to find other places. And, I wanted to celebrate that.
Oh, I think that's great because, not only for the traveler, the listening market that we have now, the expatriate, that's really what we're looking for. We're looking to experience that other culture and that different perspective on things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I see this all the time, what for me is sad to see sometimes is, you see people that come down that become expats and, they're not prepared for the change in culture and they're not used to certain things. And, because of it, it makes it 10 times harder. And some of them, for some of them, it's a little bit too much and, they might decide, enough of this, I'm going back home. But with just some basic information, just some real simple stuff, you can make everything so much easier. I mean, a classic example is, in Costa Rica, as gringos, we're pretty, straight to the point, time is money. If we've got a problem, we want to solve it now. And it just doesn't work like that down here. I mean, people take a far more relaxed approach to things and, you're never just going to jump into, fixing a solution. You're going to talk about the family. How's your family? How you doing? How are things? Just basic etiquette like that can go so far where, if Costa Ricans, if Ticos are expecting that and you don't give it to them right away, you're starting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we see this quite a bit. As a Canadian, I guess I'm not, and I'm going to use the word, forgive me, as abrasive as the Americans can sometimes come off. And I don't mean it that way. I mean that typically Americans have a very direct approach that is not necessarily effective here in Latin America.
Right, exactly. And that's, it's one of those things. It's you need to be aware of it. But once you are, it really smooths things over and things happen a lot quicker, a lot better. And it's something so simple. It just requires a little tweak in how you operate. But it can really achieve so much.
You can learn a lot about yourself, I think, though, too, when you have to make some of those tweaks that you speak of, because I know personally, I used it as a great growth opportunity to see how I'm interacting with the world differently and how it can be beneficial to be more flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's also one of these things you start to realize when the social custom of a different place is something that you're totally not used to. It's something that's based in, their historic culture, and there are differences, and it comes from how people are raised, and it comes from what they learn in school and all these things. And it's really interesting. Once you start experiencing that, and you can experience, some of that on vacation for sure. As long as you're the type of person that, is willing to go beyond having a pina colada at, the hotel pool and actually get out and start talking to locals and, go to a little local restaurant, you'll start seeing some of this stuff. But it really becomes intense as an expat. That's where you really start to, pick up on these things and notice these things. And for me, that's that's been so fascinating. And that's also been so useful for me as far as writing this book is, observing these things, paying attention to these things, noting little tiny differences here and there. And ultimately, it's allowed me to write, what I think is a fantastic travel guide.
I imagine in the last 5 years of traveling around and living and writing about Costa Rica, you've picked up a couple of interesting stories along the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's never a dull moment in Costa Rica, so much of it is things that have, trips and travels that I've done relating to the natural beauty of Costa Rica, going to incredible places. I mean, this is one of the things that makes Costa Rica so incredible is that there's so much biodiversity and natural diversity in such a small area. It's this country with two coasts, the Caribbean and the Pacific, with a huge mountain chain running through the center. And so in a matter of hours, you can go from, the tropical rainforest jungle to, a town where it drops below freezing at night. I mean, it's really extraordinary. So from, hiking on in Corcovado National Park on the Osa Peninsula, which, National Geographic famously called one of the most most biologically intense places on Earth, to hiking to the top of Chirripó, which is the tallest mountain in Costa Rica, where you can see both the Caribbean and the Pacific coast from the summit. Those experiences were just absolutely incredible.
Oh, it's one of the greatest things about Costa Rica is there's practically no end to the eco adventures that you can have here.
Yeah, and in all these years that I've been working on this guide, that's what blows me away about this country is, first off, when I came down, I thought I was going to be finished with this guide in maybe 2 years. It's been 5 years, and the guide is only now out. And there's still stuff that I didn't, fully get to. I covered, 95% of it, but there's so much to do in Costa Rica. There's so much to see. There's so much diversity. It's really an extraordinary country like that.
Now, before we get to the end of the program today, because we are running out of time, I'm afraid, I could talk to you about Costa Rica all day long, but I see that you have incorporated into the production of this book some environmentally responsible elements. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two things that I've decided to do. One is to use FSC certified paper. That's the Forest Stewardship Council. And what they do is they use paper from responsible sources. So, they're not buying it from endangered. They're not buying, the trees they make the paper from endangered tropical forest somewhere. They're buying it from sustainable sources, well regulated. That was really important to me. I didn't want to write a book about an ecologically incredible place like Costa Rica and print it on paper that, is from some horrible source that's polluting the environment and, is chopping down some virgin rainforest somewhere. So that's something that, I'm starting to do with all my guides. Once I got to a certain level where I could afford to spend money on that, because it does cost extra, I decided to use FSC paper for all of my guides. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm donating 5% of the profits to nonprofit organizations that work to preserve and protect the biodiversity of Costa Rica. So those are organizations that work with the rainforest, with the cloud forest, with the ocean life, because I really feel that, I hope that a lot of eco-travelers buy my guide. There's a lot of great information about the biodiversity of Costa Rica, and because that's such an important thing and something that we need to protect, I really wanted to help make a positive impact with tourism. And so, 5% of the profits are going to these nonprofit organizations.
Two great things to hear. And I have one last question for you, James, and I'll make it a quick one, but I know it's not fair to even ask. After 5 years of traveling around Costa Rica and writing about this beautiful country, do you have a favorite area in the country?
That's a really difficult question. But, if you put a gun to my head and said, okay, you need to choose one, I would say the Osa Peninsula. To me, that is just, spectacular. I mean, it is the purest tropical rainforest you can find, in Central America. It's filled with wildlife. I mean, I've never seen so much wildlife anywhere. To me, that's just, it's one of the most incredible biodiverse places on the planet.
Tough to get to. Did you drive or did you fly?
I've gotten there every single way. I've gone by boat. I've driven across the peninsula. I've taken the bus. I've been there every way you can imagine.
That's great. All right, we're speaking with James Kaiser today. Just wrapped up a great guide. It's called Costa Rica, the Complete Guide. It's going to retail for $22.95 US. It's going to be sold throughout the United States. But if you're anyone like me, you're not in the United States, and you can find this is going to be available on Amazon.com. And, of course, BN.com, which is Barnes & Noble. And I understand the 7th Street bookstore in San Jose will be carrying this. And I'm sure it's going to show up in a lot of other bookstores here in Costa Rica. You want more information on James, of course, you can go to www.jameskaiser.com. Of course, I'm going to put all the links on This Week in Costa Rica and on the Overseas Radio Network website, so that James can easily be accessed. And if you want to get into some of his other guidebooks, which I find to be fantastic, you certainly can. So my thanks and appreciation goes out to you today, Sir James, in San Jose.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Corey. It was an absolute blast talking to you, and I'd love to come back again.
I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go to a break, give you 5 minutes of news, but don't worry, everybody. We are coming back. Mr. Lyle Head is going to be joining us here in studio from Daystar Properties, talk about the news and blues here in Jaco and what's been going on here in the high season. Don't you guys forget, if you want to get a hold of us, that's info@thisweekincostarica.com. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or call us here toll free anywhere in the U.S., 888-741-7472 if you want to chime in on these conversations. I want to thank you guys. I'm going to take a little break now and get myself a fresh tea. You're listening to This Week in Costa Rica, only on the Overseas Radio Network.
So you want to jump out your trick bag and ease on into hip bag, but you ain't just exactly